Hi friends, I'm back and wanted to share with you how you can take your florals that you're painting and really add some easy interest to them. So here is a floral, very nice, would make a really cute card. If you notice all of the colors, it just feels a little bit flat. It's pretty, it's cute. It would be a really adorable illustration, but all of the color values are basically the same. And the edges of the petals are very uniform, very perfect. As well, there's no white space in them. So again, this is cute. This would be just fine on a card or something, but let me show you how you can add that little bit of interest and depth to your florals. All right, let's get started. Let's go ahead and paint this similar little bouquet and create a little bit more interest. So the first thing I do want to point out is I do love that it's in an odd number. So there's 3 pieces here. There's 3 objects here, which I love. I think when you're putting together a little painting, to use odd numbers is an odd number of elements is always so much more interesting. I automatically do it after all these years of painting. But something I wanted to point out just to keep in mind that 3 is much more interesting than 4 and just part of a composition. It makes it a lot more interesting. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to basically repaint this, but I'm going to add in just a few little hints to make it even more beautiful, even more interesting. I'm using my number 8 round brush. This is some Artisto paper, but I am using a larger sheet. Usually I am sharing with you all the smaller sheets, which are perfectly fine. You know, I'm a fan of the Artisto, but I am using the larger sheet today. And then I'm using my MeiLang paints, Paul Rubens MeiLang paints, and I'm gonna be sticking with those oranges. The first thing I want to do, and let me just show you this as well. If you are a little bit nervous or feel like sometimes your flowers get a little bit wonky, I will draw guidelines. And I just have to share a minute. Look at this cute little pencil. Is that the cutest thing you've ever seen? I keep saving it. That was my grandson's. He gave that to me. It's probably an inch long. Isn't that funny? Anyway, I had to point that out because I just love this little pencil. Okay, so let's draw our circles for our flowers. So we've got 3 here, which is a great start on composition. I might point out too, this composition is kind of in a triangle for sure. It could also look like a zigzag here. So really interesting, even though look how simple it is. For those of you that struggle a little bit with creating your own composition, just choose a couple flowers, place them on your paper, and put them in either a zigzag, a triangle, something like that, and start playing with that. Don't get too overly complicated. Just make a very simple design. What I'm going to do here is I've got the circles, and I have tutorials on this that I will link for you, and just draw 4 lines because you want to make sure that all your petals are facing back towards the center of your flower. And then 1 here. These might overlap a bit, and that is perfectly fine. That also adds interest. And then we've got 4 here. And to be honest, what I really should have done here, matter of fact, let's do that, is to create even more interest. I've symmetrically made all the petals exactly the same, but here's something else to think about. Let's offset, sorry for that camera shake there. Let's offset the petals a bit. And what I mean by that is, oops, my goodness, is so I just automatically put these all the same. But if you do look here, I intuitively kind of off-centered the petals so they're not exactly all going the same direction. That's a lot more interesting. So let's just redo these as well. So just to give you an idea of what I mean, is you could say this is kind of north, south, east, and west. Let's put, where did my little pencil go? It's easy to lose, it's so tiny. So let's just offset these and maybe do like this. That way, this one's going to be kind of pointing that way. And then let's maybe have this one coming out like this. And that way it's a lot more interesting, although this one is similar to that one, but that's okay, because it can also look as if it's pointing in the different direction. All right, wetting my brush, and I'm just going to scrape a little bit of that water off, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up, I used, let's see, this yellowy orange yellow on the MeiLang palette. And let's just get a little bit of that in the palette here. I'm actually going to mix it with some of the yellow I have here. It's perfectly fine. There we go. I love this color, by the way, especially for fall. And I'm making it about 50-50. So 50% water, 50% pigment. But the main thing, it really doesn't even matter what you've got in here. It's how much you pick up on your brush and tap off. So see all that extra paint that came off? Now I'm going to start with the top flower and just use the tip of my brush, light pressure, point, and then I start widening out that brush and bring it around back up on the tip there. I actually want to make this just a little bit fuller. And the first tip I have for you is leave this white space. So much more interesting. And then let's go to our second flower, petal, point, make it nice and round. And again, leaving that white space. See how much more interesting it already is? Point, press, putting pressure on my brush to widen out that belly. And last petal here, point, press. And there we go. See the difference? Already so interesting. The second thing I want to show you is for our second flower here, go in and not all flowers. Let's see if I have one here. I don't happen to have a flower like this here in my little bouquet. The edges of petals, let me show you. So point, press, are not always perfectly round. I love making the edges of my petals a little bit wonky. Point, press, leaving that white space, and you really have to put some mindfulness to that, leaving those white spaces, because we automatically want to fill it all in. And also notice on this second petal, I lightened the value for interest. So these are all the exact same value. I had a little bit more water here added in, so it's a little bit lighter. Same with this. These are a little bit darker. That one's lighter. So let's go in here, point, press, that fun shape in the tip of the petal, the edge of the petal. Let's go in for our last one here. And it's going to run into this one. And what I think I might do is let's just wait, because another interesting element, another interesting technique is to overlap some of your flowers. I did a little bit of that here, but it makes for so much more interest for your viewer. So let's go in. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of that paint, and we'll start this one here. Now, say this one here is more in front. I'm going to want to use a darker value. And when I do start planning a painting, I always do a swatch sheet. So for interest, here is my darkest value. This is like 80% pigment, 20% water. If I lighten that up a little bit, I've now got this beautiful mid value, which is about 50-50. The last one is my lightest value. You want to do that because it's going to create this push and pull. So you'll see here, once I let this dry, it's going, and I'm going to do this one in the darkest value. It's going to really pop out in front, and these lighter values are going to kind of fade to the back. So let's just, actually, we can even, well, we'll wait on this, and we'll do this last petal here a little bit darker so it looks like it's overlapping this one, because that creates that interest as well. Let's give this just a quick shot here. It'll dry quick. There we go. And I'm going to go in with my darkest value. I'll put quite a bit of paint in here so it's creamy. It's a little bit thicker. Can you see that? Quite a bit thicker. That's about 80% pigment, 20% water. I don't even need to tap it because it's pretty thick. But look at the value I'm going to get. So point, press, still leaving that those white spaces in there. Point, press. So this is kind of thick. Point, press. Got that white space, but look at how it pops out in front. Oop. Point, press, and overlapping here. See how that works? Now I really should have done this one first, so I'm gonna kind of overlap it, but I don't want it to overlap this one because that one is my darkest value and I want it to be in the front. So let's just create this petal. This was a little bit of an oops, I guess. There we go. See that? Leaving these white spaces inside. So you've kind of got this push and pull. Now watch if I go for a really, really light value, which means I'm going to add quite a bit of water to this to lighten it. So now we've got about 80% water, 20% pigment, like in this lighter one. And the value of creating this, no pun intended, value chart is so you can kind of look and say, okay, I've got some of this darkest value in here, right here. And that's the one in front. You want to make sure if you're overlapping, the darkest value is overlapping the lighter values. I've got some mid value right in here, a little bit lighter, and right now I'm going to do even a little lighter. So let's see. So that's pretty close. And watch if I put another flower right here, what happens to it. Still leaving those white spaces, and I'm tucking it in because it's in back of these others. But look at that, how it creates this beautiful depth. Now we're back into an even number of flowers, so I'm going to put one more up here. Just because, again, I like working in those even or odd numbers. Oop. So let's add one right here. Get a little bit more of that. There we go. And those now look like they're in the background. So far the tips I've given you for interest are leave white space, play with your values, making sure you have one of each of these values and making sure the darkest is in the foreground. The mid values are in about the middle and your lightest values are always in the background. Next, let's go in and we'll just create that center. So I think I will use kind of this reddish, really into this reddish color. It's called Madder Red. You could also use deep magenta, is really pretty in the MeiLang palette. Look at how beautiful that is for fall. And let's just go in here and just tap in like that. Now, if I had done that when it was wet, it would spread a little. Oh, see, like that one. That one is just a little bit because it was still damp. Tapping off my brush. There we go. Look at that interest. Isn't that gorgeous? I'll wait a little bit on these to tap in because they're still wet. And let's go ahead and bring in our stems. So I'll go to my palette here. Quite often I leave my paints in my palette because I will reuse the same colors. So my go-to green is usually sap green and an olive green. And by the way, orange and this green, or red, orange, and the green are opposites on the color wheel, so they're really pretty together. And then let's just create some stems using the tip of my brush. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we want to make sure we have 5 stems coming down. There's 4. Let's do one more over here. And I like to make mine kind of wavy. So look at how much more interesting this is. Now, the last one little tip, I think the last little tip, unless I think of something else here, is see how my leaves are, for the most part, they're the same size. Let's make that a little bit funner, more fun. Point. There we go. There's one leaf. So you can do the same thing in here with the leaves, by the way, and use all your different values. And now I've got a little leaf, point, press. So I'm varying the shape and the size of my leaves. I also point, press, point, press. I'm varying the directions they're going. So this, again, this is completely fine, but look how much more interesting. Now watch when I use a darker value. So I'm gonna pick up some of that sap green, and going back to that dark value, you can create 3 different values of your green just so you can make sure you're using them all. And I'm going to go in now and create some darker leaves. Now watch what happens. They're just gonna pop out in front. Point, press. Look at that. It just pops out. Point, press. Point, press. And really creates that beautiful interest. We could even have another one coming out here. Let's do one that's really, really light. So I'm just going to pick up the tiniest bit of that green if I need to test it out. So it's a pretty light, pretty light value. And let's put a couple of those back in the background. Point, press. Point, press. And now that really looks like there's something in the back, and our eye wants to gravitate towards that and really draws your viewers in. I feel like I want to create one more really dark one right here. So I'm going to pick up that paint in my darkest value. Point, press. There we go. Point, press. You can overlap just like you did here with the darker colors. So I've got this mid-value one behind the darker one, and my eye again is going kind of in a zigzag here with these leaves, as well with my flowers. I've got a little bit of that zigzag going on. Now I can go in and do the center of these that are very light value as well, but I want to pick up a lighter value of that red and just add it into the center. Now that's a little bit darker than I might have wanted to go, but it will lighten up. Or I can also blot it a bit, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. So very light value. There you go. Now the last thing you can do is you can go in here and maybe I'll even grab, so I've been using the orange yellow. Maybe I want to use some of that yellow, maybe even a little bit of that red. And let's just get that in our palette here. And as you can see, it's almost like a buttery consistency. I don't even need to tap off because there's not that much water on my tip of my brush. And then I'm going to, you know what would be actually really pretty is to use some of that red that we used in the center of our flower. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of that. And then let's go in and just create some detail here. So look how fun that is. So interesting. So much more interest. So for all of you that are beginning to play with florals, I hope some of these tips are helpful for you. So vary the edges, leave white space, play with your values, and add in some little details like this. It's a lot of fun. Let me go in and just finish this out. There we go. And if you remember just one, for me, the one I talk about the most is playing with the different values, because that one is just so easy. I'm gonna go in here and just darken up a couple of these. There we go. All right, I hope that was fun for you, and happy painting. And I'd love to see some of your pictures. Here you have the comparison. This perfectly fine, you guys. No, judgment or anything like that. But look at this. Which one does your eye go to? Have fun with this, and thanks for being here, everybody. Love our little community. Couldn't do this without you, and let's keep painting.